Hey, brother! Ben, do you know what is an annoyingly effective marketing strategy? The Disney Vault. I mean, do you know how many times over the past 5 years I have wanted to buy The Lion King, but couldn't? I mean, I did get it last week because it was finally released from the vault, but it is just hard to believe that in today's world, you could want to buy something as popular as The Lion King and not be able to. Especially from Disney, who on every other front seems like they are inventing new ways for you to give them money. But no, for the one movie I definitely want to give you money for, I can't. Well, today we get to the bottom of it. If you are unfamiliar with the Disney Vault, here's how it works. In a nutshell, Disney will only allow its animated movies to be purchased for a select period of time. When a movie is available for sale, it is said to be out of the vault. But if you don't buy it, then it will go back into the vault where it will not be available for purchase again for, wait for it, keep waiting another 7 to 10 years, because that's how long it'll be before you can buy that movie again. But hold on, if you suddenly just got like super stressed and felt the need to go buy every single movie you could like available right now, don't worry. Because the odd thing about the Disney Vault is that not every animated movie gets this treatment. Plenty, if not most of their animated movies are available for purchase at a moment's notice. In fact, despite the many movies Disney has produced over the years, only 16 of them have been bestowed with this, honor? They are Snow White, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, Bambi, Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians, The Jungle Book, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and of course, The Lion King. And if you're like me, your immediate question is, why those 16? Yes, they are all obviously Disney classics, but what distinguishes them? Why didn't other movies make the cut? Where's Mulan or Frozen or Tarzan or The Emperor's New Groove?
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
What do you have to do to get onto this list, Disney? Honestly, I'm actually not sure why I'm complaining. I would like for them to be easier to get. I guess I'm just sort of offended on their behalf. Well, to understand how to get on this list, you first have to understand why this list exists at all and how this strategy began. Back in the 1980s, when VHS and VCRs were starting to become available to the public and home movies were becoming a common thing, Disney was faced with an interesting dilemma: whether or not they should make their classic movies available for purchase. Now, today it sounds super obvious, like, yeah, duh, make them available, obviously people will buy them. I mean, can you imagine a world where you went and saw Frozen in theaters and we were like, yeah, that was enough times. But you have to remember, and I agree, this is like difficult to imagine a time where nobody owned a movie. The only way to see a movie was to go to the theaters. Today, it's obvious you want your movies to be available for purchase because people will buy them and can enjoy them over and over and over. But when nobody owned movies, how could the executives at Disney be expected to know how people would use them if they could own them? Like, it probably seemed ridiculous back then to think someone could rewatch the same movie and enjoy it 30 times. Plus, consider this. Why would you sell someone a movie that they could watch over and over and over when at the time, every single time they watched that movie, they had to pay for it and give you money? Well, how about because in 1980, nobody is still seeing Snow White or Pinocchio or Dumbo or whatever in theaters because they all came out over 30 years ago? How are you still making money off of them if they're not still in theaters, Disney? I'm glad you asked, because Disney, like everything else, thought of that too. The answer is they were still in theaters. Sort of. Take Pinocchio, for example. While yes, the movie originally came out in 1940, Disney re-released it in theaters in 1945, 54, 62, 71, 78, and 1984. And I think at least one more time after that. I remember seeing it myself in theaters and Mom was all stressed out because we were late and whatever. The whale scene really freaked me out. Crazy, right? I mean, you definitely don't see that happening today, or at least not very often, but the reasoning does make sense. Nobody had a way to watch movies at home, so if you missed it in theaters, You just missed it. Which, as an adult, I guess is up to you. But what if you're a kid? It's not your fault if you're a kid in the 60s that you didn't see Snow White in theaters when it came out in 1938 because you weren't born yet. And Disney felt the same way, which is why for the longest time they would just re-release their old classics every 7 to 10 years so the next generation of kids could go see it and enjoy it as well. 7 to 10 years, why does that sound familiar? Because this was the precursor to the Disney Vault. So if we go back to the 80s, VCRs are coming out and Disney has to decide, should they make their movies available for purchase? Their main concern was that by doing this, they would dilute the value of their classics because they'd be so easy to watch. Their initial solution was sort of an in-between. They would only make the videos available for rent and sell them to the rental stores at a high price of $80, which might have worked, except the rental stores were like, what makes you think we're gonna pay $80? So they reworked their strategy and decided to test it out with Pinocchio, selling it to the public at $30, and boom, immediately sold 600,000 copies, which is, I'll do some math for you, 18 million. 18 million is nothing to scoff at, but Disney are no fools. When it came time for their next movie, Sleeping Beauty, they did some math too. Here's what they found. Their research found that over the next 28 years, if they stuck with their current strategy of re-releasing Sleeping Beauty every 7 years, they could make $125 million at the theater. Or they could sell directly to the public and make about $100 million in, well, less than 28 years, probably about 6 months. So, big money in the long game or almost as big money in the way shorter game? 28 million is a big difference, but at the same time, you could use that instant 100 million to then fund other projects to make more movies that will make you more money. And obviously you already know what they chose to do, release Sleeping Beauty to the public, which was a great idea. They put an unprecedented $7 million into the marketing campaign, and it boom, sold 1.3 million copies. Not to be outdone though, next up was Cinderella, and this was a great test because in 1987 they had re-released Cinderella into theaters and it made $34 million at the box office. Not bad, but 1 year later in 1988 they released it on video and sold 6 million copies for roughly $100 million in revenue. Agreed, impressive, but as ever, no one tops the real queen of Disney, Snow White. To review, Pinocchio, 600,000, Sleeping Beauty, 1.3 million, Cinderella, 6 million, Snow White, 50 million copies sold. And it just cannot be said often enough how important Snow White is to Disney. Honestly, we should just make a whole video about how awesome Snow White is at some point. And that's basically it. All of the movies that had been being re-released into theaters over and over and over are the ones who made it onto the list for the Vault, where the tradition continues, except instead of being released in theaters, they're only released for purchase every 7 to 10 years. And unbelievably, this one practice, the rise of the VCR and home video entertainment, is what kickstarted Disney into being able to fund the next generation of Disney classics, the Disney Renaissance. That does leave us with one question though. What about the movies on the Vault list that came out after the innovation of VHS? In particular, Beauty and the Beast, The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and The Lion King. How did they decide on those movies, and why has no other movie been vaulted since 1994? Honestly, I don't know, but I do have a theory. My initial guess was that they're just the ones that made the most money, but that's not true. In fact, just among Disney Renaissance movies, The Little Mermaid comes in second to last in revenue. So we looked at a lot of things and compared all the Disney Renaissance movies in a multitude of ways, and the only way to rank those 4 movies together at the top was, interestingly, by Oscar wins and nominations. Each of those 4 movies won 2 Oscars and was nominated for for at least 3. Pocahontas also won 2, but was only nominated for 2. And interestingly, and I'm sure Disney doesn't take into account Rotten Tomatoes when deciding what goes into the vault, but those 4 have the highest ranking on the Disney Renaissance, whereas Pocahontas is down at like 56%. But Jay, I hear you saying, what about other Disney animated movies? Surely since 1994, another one has earned more than 2 Oscars, right? Surprisingly though, they haven't. Yes, some Pixar movies have, Toy Story 3, Up, and The Incredibles, but the Disney Vault seems reserved for things that were 100% Walt Disney animation. And the only other movie that might fit the bill with 2 Oscar wins is, unsurprisingly, Frozen, which, like Pocahontas, was nominated for 2 and won 2, but it's been on sale since it came out, but then it's also been super popular since it came out, so I don't know if they'll ever vault Frozen, but right now I'm giving it a solid maybe. By the way, fun fact, not to be outdone, Snow White was only nominated for 1 Oscar, and guess how many it won? 2! Hashtag Snow White is queen. So Ben, my question for you and everyone else is, what movie do you think should be in the Disney Vault that isn't? And have you ever had trouble getting a Disney movie because it was in the vault? Let me know your thoughts in the towel section down below. These socks are amazing! Guys, thanks for watching this video. As always, please remember to like the video if you haven't already, and subscribe so you don't miss any future Disney action from us. If you want some more Disney history, you can click right here to learn about the mouse that saved Disney, or you can click right here to learn how Kevin from Up is actually a weird metaphor for Mickey Mouse. Ben, that's all I've got for you today, man. I will see you in another life, brother.